Hey guys, today I want to talk about D2 steel and budget knives because this topic has been on top of my head for a while now, and I've read a lot about this whole D2 thing, and I've probably stumbled way too deep into this whole topic. So I want to keep it short in this video so it's still watchable about the whole steel discussion. And because I also want to show you this QSP Neckmuk and sort of give you my thoughts about this knife, because I have it for a while and sort of never did a video. And I've been using it a bit lately, so I thought I might as well make a video now before I put it away again and don't use it enough. So yeah, I'll just while I'm talking, I will just show you how this knife carves, so you have something to look at least. Now, okay, budget knives. In order to make a budget knife, in order to make something inexpensive, you need to make a lot of it. If you make a lot of it, you also have to grind and heat treatment a lot of blades, right? If you go to any knife maker and ask him, hey, I want to make something as cheap as possible and I want to make as much of it as possible, what's a good steel to use for that sort of thing? Nobody's ever going to tell you that D2 steel is a good thing for that. Here's why. In comparison to a lot of other steels, D2 is relatively difficult to grind and difficult to heat treatment. Of course, there are a lot more difficult steels to work with, a lot of powdered steels for say, but there are also a lot more simpler steels, a lot more easier to work with steels. And like for instance, AUS 8, 8013 MOV, 12C27, we have seen those steels a lot. I think 12C27 was even developed to be a mass production, lower cost knife steel. So yeah, why do we see D2 steel so much in budget knives now? Because this is really what D2 steel has become. I remember when I was younger, D2 steel was like a really high grade, high performance steel. But now it's seen a lot in budget knives, it's seen a lot in the 50 to 70 euro price range. It's really not that high grade, quote, high grade steel anymore. And I have had dozens and dozens of D2 blades over the years, and some of them performed really bad, some of them performed really well. And yeah, so you can't really say D2 steel is D2 steel, because every blade is going to perform a little bit different depending on its geometry, its heat treatment, the edge that the manufacturer puts in it. All those things are very, very important. And yeah, I don't think D2 steel is a good choice for a budget knife, honestly. And the reason I think that is, like I said, it's just more difficult to work with. And if you want to have more performance in a knife, in a budget knife, I think you should upgrade the heat treatment before you would upgrade the steel. Because if you just use a different steel, but still have the same bad heat treatment, and if you're producing knives at a really high pace and high quantity, you're going to have to heat treat a lot of knives, and a lot of them are going to be not as good, right? Because you have just produce more of them. So some of them are going to have good hardness results, and other of them are not so much, right? So yeah, I think you can get really, really high performance out of D2 steel in more expensive knives, let's say custom knives, because they also most of the time give you a custom heat treatment. They treat one blade at a time, or just a couple of blades at a time, and not hundreds of them. And yeah, I think D2 steel at its core, it's not a bad steel. I think it has like 1.5% carbon, has like 12%, between 11 and 12% chromium, a little bit of vanadium in there as well. And this is sort of a myth that I hear about D2 steel a lot, is that it's very close to a stainless steel because it has like 12% chromium. And I believe that as well for the longest time. But I've read into this topic a little bit more, and I found out that if you have a certain amount of chromium and if you have a certain amount of carbon and vanadium, the carbon and vanadium is gonna bind some of that chromium into carbides. Carbides are very important for every steel, and some steel have more refined carbides, some of them have really big carbides, and some of them have a lot of volume of carbides and some of them don't. So, and this is all important for the performance of the blade. Ideally you want small carbides and not a lot of them, but D2 has really big carbides, and also a lot of the chromium is in those carbides, so they are chromium carbides basically. And so the thing is, you have about 12% chromium, but about 6% of that is tied up into those carbides, and the rest is in the solution helping with corrosion resistance. So you only have about 6 of the 12% chromium helping with the stain resistance. So it's not really anywhere close to a stainless steel actually. Although I have to say, I have never had like really bad rust issues with D2 steel, but it always depends, of course, on the humidity. Are you close to salt water? All those kinds of things. So yeah. So what do we end up with? We end up with a steel that's not really close to a stainless steel. It's also not the toughest steel because it has like big carbides, and it's decent in edge retention though. So we have a steel that's decent in edge retention, it's not super tough, and it's not super stain resistant. Now I think that's a very bad combination, all of those three things combined, for a budget knife steel, because ideally you want high toughness. Edge retention is not as important, I think, at least to me, in a low-cost knife, because that's not what I'm looking for in a budget knife, right? In a budget knife I want stability, and I want stain resistance is also not bad because you don't have to take care of it as much. You don't want to take care of a budget knife as much usually, at least I don't. So yeah, I think this is really not an ideal steel for a budget knife. And other YouTubers have shown in some steel testing videos, I will leave you a link down in the description box if you want to watch one of those for yourself as well, that in comparison to other budget steels, D2 is not really performing any better in sort of edge retention, which D2 is good at edge retention, but it's not performing better in most budget knives because of the heat treatment. So going back to what I said, heat treatment is more important to steel. If you just put a higher grade steel in a budget knife but still don't treat it as well, the lower grade steels like AUS 8, ACR13 MOV, 12C27, which are all not bad steels, they are still good and buyable steels, I think. But D2 doesn't perform better in edge retention, and edge retention is really the only thing D2 is really good at, because it's not that great in toughness, it's not that great in stain resistance, as I explained to you. So yeah, I think we kind of went in a wrong direction with our D2 for budget knives is the best steel. I think that's the wrong direction. We really should focus on better heat treatment. I mean, knife companies should focus on better heat treatment and not on giving you a different number on the steel, because that doesn't mean anything to anybody that's not an expert in this topic. So you just believe that it's better or worse, but you really don't know, right? So that's the thing. Now let's speak about this QSP Neckmuk, since we are on the topic. This is sort of an outdoorsy neck knife, and really doesn't, so the steel choice really doesn't make a lot of sense, because like I explained, if you are in the outdoors, you probably also want toughness more than edge retention, and you also want stain resistance more than edge retention. But this has edge retention first, and then stain resistance, and then toughness. So It's really should be the opposite. So not a great steel choice. Yeah, I like the design, I really do. When I saw this knife coming out, I was immediately drawn to it. I think it's a good design. It's a modern interpretation of a Neckmuk style, which was Neckmuk was popularized by, I think, George Washington Sears was his name. He was an author and also outdoorsman, and he really popularized that blade shape. And I think it's a beautiful blade shape. The tip, it looks like the tip is like dropping down, but it's actually, we have something straight. The tip is actually in line with the shoulders of the scales, so it's actually a high tip, but it's sort of an illusion. It looks like the tip is way lower than it actually is. So it's sort of a mixture between like it has like good belly and it sweeps up, but the tip is also really high, and yeah, it's just a beautiful, interesting blade shape. I mean, beautiful in a practical sense, not as much in an aesthetic sense, I would say, but it is. I think it's beautiful. So yeah, I think the design idea alone, 10 out of 10. Let's talk about the performance a little bit. The knife is, I think it's like, looks like a 4mm blade. It's relatively thinly ground, so it's stout on top and thin behind the edge. Good combination between, you know, strength and being able to cut something, at least in terms of geometry. And yeah, it performs really well. The blade performs really well. I did some testing on cardboard and it sliced really well. QSP Neckmuk. Initial sharpness out of the box. Shaving sharp, good shaving sharpness. Good at slicing paper, getting stuck in the choil quite a bit though. Let's check out some thin cardboard. Whoa! Excellent against the grain. Oops, that's my mistake. Excellent both with and against the grain. A little bit of a binding, again at the sharpening choil, or sharpening notch, I should say. Rope. Whoa, very easy. Yeah, just a laser against cardboard out of the box, so it was really pleasant to use it. Also cut a lot of rope with it, also performed really well. Yeah, it's just nice EDC blade, that is. For outdoor use, like I said, I'm not too fond of the steel. It does actually carve very well, so it goes into wood pretty good, and you have good control over that blade. So yeah, I like how it cuts, and I've been using over the last weeks, I've been using different kinds of woods, and I performed relatively well against all of them. There is some chimping on the spine here, and the chimping is really sharp, and it also tells you where to put your thumb, which it kind of helps you with cutting, but it also limits you because you may want to choke up a little bit further. And the chimping kind of puts you in a position, so you're not as free in position. But because the chimping is so sharp, almost uncomfortably sharp, it also helps you with cutting. So yeah, it's a sort of a good and bad at the same time with the chimping. The only thing I found a little bit annoying is that the big choil, the sharpening choil, which is good for resharpening, but it kind of binds a lot of material into there. So especially the EDC stuff, cardboard, tape, always get stuck in here, which is kind of annoying. And yeah, the handle is sort of an inspired handle by the Outdoors Edge Le Duc knife, which used to be like a very popular budget knife a couple of years back. I don't think it's produced anymore. I don't know what happened to the Le Duc knife. Not really. I didn't really follow or kept up with the Le Duc knife and what happened to it. But yeah, this end of the handle is definitely inspired by the Le Duc knife, and I think it's actually not too bad, because if you put your pinky here, right, with your pinky you can control the tip of the blade, which is cool, because by twisting, because if you think about this motion, right, you control with these two fingers, so it helps you with directing the tip even though you are far away from the tip, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I like this, I kind of like it. But also in combination with the other grooves, it's kind of also, it forces you in a position again, like the chimping does. So this knife tells you exactly where to place your hand, and I don't really like that most of the times, because actually all the times I never like it too much when knives tell me what to do. So it might be a character thing, I don't know. So, but yeah, it forces you in a position, and that kind of sucks. And that's also the reason I don't use this knife a lot, because I like the blade, but I don't like that this knife puts me in a position that I might not want to be in. So yeah, I don't know, mixed feelings about this knife. I like the idea. I would like to see it with a different handle, maybe even without the whole duck beak back here, even though it's practically good for controlling the tip, but it's also, it forces you just too much in a position. I think neutral handles are the best handles still in all the knife designs there are. I show you the sheath real quick, and we're also gonna compare it to another budget fixed blade before we wrap up this video. Good sheath, also, I mean, good Kydex sheath, good retention. It's a little bit wide. I really don't like these pancake style sheaths. I like the taco style Kydex much more, because it's a slimmer profile, both around your neck and inside your pocket. I don't really carry neck knives, but I want to carry this inside my pocket, because I mean, you could throw a tack lock on here and keep it on your belt, but you know, let's be honest, this is really a small knife to carry on your belt. I don't really like it. I would just put it in my pocket. So yeah, I think the sheath is unnecessarily wide, but it's good quality. In general, the whole knife is not bad at all for the price. But I also have this Artisan Cutlery Sea Snake, which is a totally different blade shape, but I just wanted to show you, in the same price range you can get this knife, and this is an excellent Kydex, so even much better than the QSP knife. Excellent Kydex, much slimmer profile. It's compatible with tack lock, and also you can put these clips on here, which doesn't come with the knife, but you can put them on here, which is great. So you can clip the knife. And yeah, these are same size, about the same size. Artisan Cutlery is much thinner, which helps with slicing, and has this Wharncliffe blade. Nice choil up here, 3D contoured G10, and this one has flat G10. So there is a little bit of contouring going on at the corners, but this is a much more comfortable handle, and it's also neutral, so you can hold it however you like it. And if you think about it, holding it like this is not really comfortable with this knife, so the knife is not usable in all the directions. So yeah, both of these are screwed construction, which I don't ever put off the scales on any of my fixed blades that have this option, but yeah, whatever. Yeah, both of them are flat ground. This one has a budget powdered steel, which Artisan Cutlery has developed themselves, and it's called ARPM9. And yeah, I have to do a follow-up video in order to tell you more about that steel. I have used it, I have resharpened it, but I still not comfortable enough to tell you how I feel about that steel. I don't know. I think it's a good steel, but yeah, I don't have as much experience with the steel yet as I have with D2. So I will wait before I give you a full follow-up on that artisan cutlery steel. But yeah, just to show you, this has a powdered steel, probably smaller grain structure, so we can probably expect better toughness out of this. And also I think better stain resistance, because it has more chromium in the solution, not tied up in carbides. So yeah, you can get, for the same price, you can get a better steeled knife basically. And I think it also has better features, like with the kydex and everything. It's just not the same shape, which if you buy this knife, you probably buy it for the shape, because it looks cool. I think even the grooves, they look cool. They just don't work as well. So yeah, can recommend you this knife if you're looking for a budget fixed blade, small fixed blade. I think this is a good knife. So yeah, I hope we see another version of the Neckmuk in the future. Maybe without the finger grooves, I don't know. Would be cool, because I really like the idea of that. Still, for the price, it's not a bad knife at all. Not a bad knife. This is just better. It's crazy what kind of knives you can get for 50 bucks these days. Crazy. On one hand, we see like really overpriced knives now. Every folder costs like 500 euros now. And but in the budget knife category, you can still find some really good deals. And I think both of them are worth the money they ask for it. So there you go. Thank you guys for watching this video. Yeah, maybe we see each other in another video. Goodbye, people.